Put your faith in the light.
Hello guys, welcome to another one of my videos. This is Lightblade, and well guys, in this one I wanted to talk about the new rotation of Mythic Plus dungeons that is coming in 10.2. But not only talk about it and give you guys my opinion, but also tell you guys what good potential loot there is in there, and also talk about some like highlight enemies that exist in those dungeons. So with that being said, let's get into the video. Okay guys, let's go from the oldest dungeons to the most new ones. So Throne of the Tides. This place wasn't in my mind when I thought they were going to put a dungeon from Cataclysm. So yeah, Throne of the Tides is a very weird dungeon, even in time walking, especially because there's one boss that people don't really know what it does. Mindbender Gujra. This is one boss that everyone skips in time walking week, so I'm guessing people are going to have to learn it for when it releases on 10.2 as a Mythic Plus dungeon. As all the other bosses, I think their mechanics are pretty simple. Ozumat is a weird fight, you know, because he spawns a bunch of little ads that you have to deal with, and then you become big and just destroy the big boss, you know, so it's going to be a pretty fun fight. I think the trash in this place also has pretty decent mechanics. There's a lot of Naga that do like Chain Lightning, Frost Shock. They also do heals that you have to interrupt, so there's a lot of things to do in this place. I didn't really think Throne of the Tides was going to be a good dungeon, but now that I think about it, it's a pretty decent one, you know. A lot of things to do. I think it's going to hold up, and I'm guessing Blizzard is going to swap some mechanics around, you know, how they do for all dungeons, to make it a bit spicier. As for the loot department, in this place there's really not much things to think about, you know. There's two trinkets that are kind of meh. The first one is Might of the Ocean. It's a crit trinket that has an on use and gives you strength. It's in a 1.5 minute cooldown, which is sad because we as Retribution Paladins want to like 1 minute trinkets or 2 minute trinkets, because we're like a 1 minute class, you know. So if you have acid in 1.5 minute trinkets, you're never getting the full value of the trinket. So kind of meh trinket. Next one, we have Personal Crab. So this thing I think is more meant for tank specialization, because this thing doesn't really have a primary stat. It does have versatility on it, and it has a proc of mastery. So depending on how this thing is actually like scaled up, it might be good or it might be bad. I'm thinking it's going to be just kind of meh, you know, because it doesn't have that primary stat. All in all, I think Throne of the Tides is going to be a decent dungeon. I'll give it a 6 out of 10, you know, nothing incredible, just fine. Let's go to the next one. Okay, for the next one we have to go to Warlords of Draenor. So the Everbloom. Yes, this is one of the dungeons I actually thought they were going to put in for this season, you know. I think I did a video about this, and yeah, it was one of my predictions. I think Everbloom is a really fun dungeon because of the routing you can do. There's a lot of paths you can take to go to bosses. There's a lot of different trash you can kill. The trash is not a pushover as well. They do have mechanics that you have to deal, kicks and all those kinds of things. There is also a wild card here, which is this boss, Zeritak. No one knows what this thing does because everyone skips it in time walking, so everyone's going to be learning this boss when it goes live, as well as the one in the Throne of the Tides, you know. So yeah, of the other bosses, most of them rely on the kick mechanics. As you can see here, Ancient Protector, you gotta kick a lot of things, and if you don't kick, you have to dispel. Archmage Soul has a bunch of kicks that you have to deal with, and depending on what you kick, it's going to go to a different phase. Zalno is just a big AoE fest, you know, that you have to kill a bunch of plants to just down the boss, and so you don't get overwhelmed by the big plants if they grow. So yeah, I think this is going to be a great addition to Mythic Plus pool. From the loot department, there isn't really nothing of notice except this one trinket, which is Spores of Alacrity. This might be really good or kind of meh, you know, because it does have primary strength, and it gives you a ton of haste on just a 389 version of this trinket with a decent proc. You know, it's under 1 procs per minute, and I think it's going to be pretty decent, especially for the Crusading Strikes build, if you don't have something like incredible from the raid or anything like that. Other stuff from this place is not very noticeable, you know. The rings and the necks from Warlords of Draenor do have strength, but those things are going to probably get changed to like just secondary stats when this thing goes live for Mythic Plus dungeons. All in all, I give the Everbloom a 7 out of 10. It's a good dungeon. I think it's a good addition to the Mythic Plus pool. Now let's go to the next one. Okay guys, so we are with the Legion dungeons. This is one of my favorite eras of Mythic Plus dungeons. Fun fact, Black Rook Hold, the one that we're going to talk about now, is one of the first videos I did on my, actually it's the first video I did on my channel. I did a guide on Black Rook Hold and how to deal with all these bosses. So I'm just going to link it down here in the description of the video, and if you want to go check out my first ever video of the channel, you can do so there, you know. And I'm just going to warn you, the audio and the quality of the video is not the best, you know, but still, it's just fun to see some stuff from the past. Okay, so what's noticeable from Black Rook Hold? A lot of people are saying, oh, this dungeon is horrible, it's going to be a puck killer, and they're kind of right on some of that, mostly on Elysian and Ravencrest. This boss is a bit of a pain in the ass, especially if people don't know what they're doing. There's a lot of damage that you can avoid, and if you don't avoid it, you just split the damage to everyone else, and it becomes really hard to heal. This is especially because of Brutal Glaive. It bounces, so you have to be kind of away from other people so it doesn't bounce, you know. The radius is a bit big, so just be away from other people if you get targeted by this thing. Other than that, the Dark Rush is something that you have to always be wary about. You have to like split around and then like move as fast as you can from the Burning Trail. I think this is one of the bosses that is problematic, but people talk about like Amalgam of Souls and Kurtalos. Both of them have like one-shot mechanics. In Legion, we used to get immunities, and we also used like things like Pridas before a fight that was like this, so you could like use a hard defensive and then use your shield of Pridas and survive these types of mechanics. But now we have a lot of buttons, guys. We have a lot of the damage reduction on every single class. I'm thinking everyone can survive the explosions of either the Amalgam of Souls or the Shadow Balls of Lord Kurtalos, you know, when the big Dreadlord spawns. So this is one of the dungeons, like I said, was my favorite of that era. I did it like about 450 times to get a Titan Forge relic. I did get it, so I did also get a bunch of extra Titan Forge stuff from this place, and I think it's going to be a great addition to the Mythic Plus pool. I'm gonna give this place a 9 out of 10. Oh, on the loot department, there's nothing of value. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Yeah, the only trinket this place drops is this spiked counterweight, which is a really bad trinket. It was a bad trinket back then. I think it's going to be a bad trinket now, because even though it says like your target takes 15% extra damage, wow, that's huge, you know, it's capped, so it's never going to be like entry incredible. So yeah, nothing of value from the loot department, but a really fun dungeon to do. Now let's go to the next one of this era. Okay, the next dungeon we're going to talk about is Darkheart Thicket. There's also people that are saying this place is going to be a nightmare, and I'm asking myself why. This place is so fun to do. If you're a melee, that is, the cats in this dungeon are going to be a nightmare for certain people, and I hope they fix this, because in Legion, any cat or dog like jump to the farthest like range player, or they sometimes pick just one person and just everyone jump to that person, and he just got insta-gibbed, you know. So I'm thinking they could change the coding of the cats so they don't jump to one person, like they split around, so those things don't happen. I think that's mostly what the complaints of Darkheart Thicket, you know, the cats, because I don't think people are complaining about little plants that are around in this place. They don't do anything. What else? The dryads don't do anything. It's only the cats that people don't like of this place. And of course, some of the bosses are very dangerous. For example, I think Dressaron and Shade of Sabius are the most dangerous bosses in this place, but mostly is because people don't know how to deal with the mechanics. You know, Dressaron, when he does the wind, you gotta be close to him. If you're not close to the wind is stronger, and you're going to be pushed to the eggs, and everything is going to be just horrible for your group, because you have to deal with ads then, and it's just a really hard fight after that point. And Shade of Sabius, people are saying, oh yeah, this guy is going to one-shot your group. You only have to survive one thing, and it's at 50% he does the explosion. You gotta use a big defensive. Now guys, in 2023 we have a ton of extra buttons to press to survive this thing. I don't think this is going to be a problem, you know. I think Darkheart Thicket is a free dungeon if people know kind of what they're doing, not even like know what they're doing, just kind of, because also the mechanics on Shade of Sabius are pretty like self-explanatory, you know. If you get silence, go near someone. If you get the red like root thing like on yourself, don't get near anyone or you'll get feared. Pretty simple. Now let's talk about the loot of this place. So the loot is also worthless, at least for us Retribution Paladins, you know. The Nightmare Eggshell is the best thing of this place, I think, and it's not really good. There's better haste trinkets. Like I think we saw one in Everbloom that's really good, and this thing is is, I think, worse than that, because this thing has a really crappy proc rate. I think it was like one per every 2 minutes or something like that. It wasn't really good. So yeah, it also doesn't give you the haste all at once. It ramps up, so I don't think this trinket is worth it. So, and other things of this place, there isn't really. It's just loot from Legion. Maybe they add weapons to this dungeon that could make it a bit more valuable, you know, maybe a two-hander or something like that. But for now, if it stays like that, that's not really good on the loot department. But the dungeon itself is pretty fun, and I think it's going to be pretty easy to do. I'm gonna give it a 8 out of 10 just because if they don't fix the cats. But it's a good addition to the Mythic Plus pool. Let's go to the next ones. That brings us to the BFA era. So yes, there's two of my favorite, well, not two, one of my favorite dungeons and one that I didn't really like from this era that are coming back. Let's go on alphabetical order, which is the first one is Atal'Dazar. Atal'Dazar is, I'm gonna say it, a gimmick dungeon. I don't like this place a lot because all bosses have a gimmick. And the gimmick is very annoying, you know. For example, Priestess Alunza, you have to deal with the blood. You gotta deal with the transfusion. This boss kills itself, so it's one of the easiest bosses to deal with, but it can be one of the hardest if people don't know what they're doing. If they don't kill the ad and you lose the puddle of blood that it's in the ground, yes, you're gonna be here a lot of the times and you're just gonna wipe to this boss. But if you do the mechanics well, you handle the gimmicks correctly, these bosses are pretty easy to do, you know. And there's one other thing of Atal'Dazar that's, I think, good. It's the routing. You can go to any of these three first bosses. You know, you can go to Bolkal, you can go to Priestess Alunza, or you can go to Razan first. Doesn't matter. You can pick whatever route you can do. You know, so that's, I think, one thing about this place. But I don't really like those gimmicks. You know, Bolkal, for example, has the totem gimmick where you can't hit the boss unless you kill the 4 totems at the same time. And sometimes groups don't have the coordination to do that, so it's annoying for those pug groups. Razan has that fear mechanic and the pursuit. You know, he's gonna run after someone, he grabs that person, he dies because it does a ton of damage. It goes through like a lot of defensive things. You gotta just run away from the thing or get like a immunity on yourself. So yeah, there's a ton of stuff that can kill you in this place, and it's probably going to be one of the dungeons that pugs are going to suffer a bit the most, I think. As in for the loot, there's only one thing, and it's this thing. It's Razan's Gleaming Eye. This is a really decent haste trinket. We've seen already 3 haste trinkets from these dungeons, you know. I think the one from Everbloom is a bit better than this one because it has more haste. Well, probably is going to have more haste, you know, because it lasts only 10 seconds. This one lasts a bit longer, but it's going to have a little less haste. Probably have to sim between those trinkets if you want to use one of those haste proc trinkets and see which one has the best proc rate as well, you know. But I remember Razan Gleaming Eye was pretty decent in the BFA, probably is going to be pretty decent in current times. I give this dungeon a 6 out of 10. I don't like the gimmicks, but I think it's just fine, you know. It's gonna be a pug killer, but what you can do, you know. Pugs are gonna die. Now let's go to the next one. Okay, the next dungeon is one of my favorites from this era, and it's Waycrest Manor. So Waycrest Manor is a fun dungeon, but it has a lot of stuff that is happening, and it's a bit claustrophobic. You know, there's a lot of those like pathways that are very close quarters. They are very annoying on certain affixes, but we got rid of most of those affixes. You know, there's no quaking. There's still sanguine, but it lasts less than it used to last in like BFA era. You know, we have the tornado thingies, but I think that it's manageable. You know, even though the hallways are very small and it's very cramped up, I think it's manageable for this era of dungeons. The bosses are the problem because, as you can see, there's 5 bosses and all of them are very dangerous. The most dangerous, I think, is the Triad. The witches are the place where pugs go to die, because there's a lot of kicks that you have to bear in mind, and each witch has like a special ability. You also have to focus down the witch that's getting this item that's called the Focusing Iris. If you don't, she's going to do a big explosion and everyone's going to die. So it's a DPS race, and it's also a manage the mechanics race on this fight. The other fights are more comprehensible, you know. This is just a tank and spank. The tank has to like bring this golem to fire so he doesn't lose his stacks, and the tank doesn't just insta die, you know, and so on and so forth. The other bosses have pretty self-explanatory mechanics: dodge the things, kill the boss. Lady and Lord Waycrest have some kick gimmicks that you have to deal with, you know. If you get I remember Protection Warrior was really good here because he could do some really good reflex. And Gorak Tool, you know, it's a pretty simple fight actually to do Gorak Tool. You gotta just kill those ads so they don't stun the person that they're targeting, and you should be fine. So all in all, Waycrest Manor is a really fun dungeon because it also has a ton of AoE, so you can do huge pulls here. I'm waiting to see what people are going to do with Rahl. Rahl was one of the places where you could just pull everything in his room and just nuke it with the boss, because there was only one guy that did a cast, and it was one of the big Kultiran guys, and that was just it. Everyone else just didn't do anything, so you could just nuke down this boss with the trash. So I'm waiting to see those videos. And well, on the loot department, there's actually a pretty good trinket here. This one can work for both builds, either Crusading Strikes and Templar Strikes, I think. It gives you main stat strength, and it gives you a bunch of critical strike every 15 seconds. For 15 seconds. It had a pretty decent proc rate. I think it's like one procs per minute that can be hasted in BFA, so it's a lot more than that. And it gives you a pretty decent amount of crit. And remember, we're losing the tier set that made Hammer of Rat, well, we crit a lot, you know, crit 100% at the time. So crit is going to be a bit more valuable now than it was in the past. So yeah, I'm gonna give Waycrest Manor a 9 out of 10, even though I know a lot of people are going to hate it because of the bosses, and some of them are really dangerous, but I remember it fondly, and it was a really fun dungeon to do back then in BFA. So 9 out of 10. Let's go to the next ones. Okay, let's talk about the current era dungeons. So Dawn of the Infinite. As is tradition, Blizzard is going to split down the mega dungeon into 2 dungeons that we can use for Mythic Plus, you know. So of the 2 parts, I'm thinking the first one is going to be the easiest one to do, because the bosses on that first part are Chronicar, Manifested Time Waste, Blight of Glarkron, Iridikron. Most of them are pretty straightforward bosses, you know, they're pretty simple to do, and I don't think there's many gimmicks, exception the Manifested Time Waste. You have to use the ground mechanic, but it's very intuitive, you know, so it's very simple to do. I think also the loot on the first part is good because of the Accelerating Sandglass. This trinket is actually pretty damn good if you're using the Crusading Strikes build, because it gives you a bunch of haste because it stacks 8 times, and it also gives you some priority damage when it procs on the second part, you know, the extra damage. So I'm thinking this is just a really good trinket. Currently I'm trying to get this thing, but never drops every week, so I'm just kind of sad, you know. I want to just try to play with it and see how it does, but I'm thinking it's going to be really good. Okay, so for the first part of Dawn of the Infinite, I'm going to give this place an 8 out of 10. It's pretty good. I think it's going to be fun and easy to do. Now let's go to the second part. So second part is going to be a bit more difficult to do, especially because of one boss, and this is Morchi. You know, I think there is a weak aura that tells you which is the real Morchi, but still I think Morchi is going to be the harder of the fights, you know, because you have to also deal with the clone that she creates, you know, and sometimes there's no enough of those circles so you can stun your mob. You have to like CC it yourself, and yeah, it's a very hectic fight. I think pugs are going to go to die in Morchi. Tear of the Infinite is pretty chill fight, you know. It can get out of hand if people don't soak the things, but for the most part it's pretty straightforward. Time Lost Battlefield, it was really easy, just a super easy boss on normal Mythic. Might get a bit harder in Mythic Plus, but still don't know. And Chronolord Deus actually is going to be a bit hard, I think, in Mythic Plus, and yeah, that's mostly because that's mostly why I think this second part is going to be hard. You know, Morchi and Chronolord Deus both are pretty hard bosses to do, so yeah, the second part of Dawn of the Infinite is going to be like a bug killer. But on the loot department, there is a good trinket from this place, and this is the Mirrored at Fractured Tomorrow. So this trinket is pretty decent. Personally, I don't like 3-minute trinkets, but if you don't get anything that's super good from the raids, and we're going to do a video talking about raid stuff, but for now, if you don't get anything from the raid, this is one of the strongest trinkets that you can get, you know, if you can manage your cooldowns and you play with an organized group where you can use your 3-minute trinket and get the most value out of it, you know. If not, I think it's better to just use 2 stat sticks and just call it a day, but it's a good thing to have in mind. For the score of the second part of Dawn of the Infinite, I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10, you know. I don't like most of these bosses. I like the first part more than the second part, so yes, only a 6 out of 10 for the second part. And well guys, that's my overview of all the dungeons that are coming in 10.2. I'm going to be doing a guide on each and every one of these dungeons when they go live. So that's going to be like in a few months, but I'm going to be trying to do that, you know. Just because, well, like I said, the first guide I ever did was on the Black Rook Hold. I'm gonna repeat again, I'm going to link it down in the description of the video when I check that video. So I'm going to try to do something like that for most of these dungeons, telling you guys some tips and tricks on how to survive certain mechanics and all those kinds of things. And well guys, if you enjoy my content, subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the videos. Thanks for watching everyone.